The last human standing. Earth was silent. The cities were gone, the forests burned, and the oceans turned red with ash. Captain Orion Blake, the last human alive, stood alone on a battlefield that had once been a vibrant city. His armor was scratched, his weapon nearly out of power, but his eyes burned with defiance. He had fought too hard, lost too much, to give up now. Above him, the alien fleet hovered like vultures, their ships casting long shadows over the ruins. The Xerth Alliance had crushed humanity, one city at a time, leaving nothing but smoke and silence in their wake. Blake was all that remained. His comm device crackled. "Surrender, human," a cold, mechanical voice said. It was General Thrax, the leader of the Xerth invasion. "Your race is gone. You have nothing left to fight for." Blake didn't respond. He tightened his grip on his plasma rifle, the last working weapon he had. His breath was shallow, his wounds deep, but he wouldn't let the Xerth see his pain. He scanned the horizon, noting the movement of the enemy troops. They were closing in, their tall, insect-like forms glinting under the dim light of a dying sun. Blake activated the small beacon on his wrist. It was old technology, something humans had built long ago and nearly forgotten. Even he didn't fully understand what it would do. All he knew was that it was his last chance. The device began to hum softly, its light blinking faintly. The Xerth troops advanced, their weapons raised. Blake took a deep breath, steadying himself. He aimed his rifle at the nearest alien and fired. The blast hit its target, sending the creature sprawling to the ground. The others hesitated for a moment, then charged. Blake moved quickly, firing shot after shot. His aim was precise, but the rifle's energy depleted fast. With every step the aliens took, his chances of survival shrank. Sweat dripped down his face as he dodged incoming fire, diving behind a crumbling wall for cover. "You can't win this," Thrax's voice boomed through the air. The general stood atop a nearby ship, his black armor gleaming. "Your kind is weak. You should have accepted your fate." Blake gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He peeked out from behind the wall and saw the aliens spreading out, surrounding him. He needed to buy time. For the beacon, for himself, for whatever slim hope still remained. "Fate didn't save you," Blake muttered under his breath, then yelled aloud, "You'll have to kill me first." He jumped from his cover and unleashed the last of his rifle's energy, taking down 2 more aliens before it overheated. Now defenseless, Blake drew his combat knife. He knew it wouldn't be enough, but he wasn't going down without a fight. The first alien lunged at him, and he dodged, slashing its side. Another swung a sharp claw at his chest, ripping through his armor. Blake stumbled but stayed on his feet, refusing to fall. Pain seared through his body, but he didn't stop. Each second felt like an eternity. He fought with every ounce of strength he had left, but the aliens kept coming. Finally, one of them struck him hard, knocking him to the ground. Blake lay there, breathing heavily. His vision blurred, and his strength faded. The beacon on his wrist glowed brighter now, emitting a low rhythmic pulse. The ground beneath him began to vibrate. The air grew cold, and an unnatural stillness settled over the battlefield. The Xerth troops froze, looking around nervously. Even General Thrax seemed unsettled. "What is this?" he growled, stepping down from his ship. He approached Blake, his towering form casting a shadow over the fallen captain. Blake coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. He looked up at Thrax and managed a weak smile. "You have no idea what you've done," he said, his voice barely a whisper. The ground cracked. In the distance, the mountains rumbled, their icy peaks shattering like glass. Bright blue light erupted from the fissures, spreading across the landscape. A cold wind swept through the battlefield, carrying with it a strange, electric energy. "What is happening?" Thrax barked, stepping back. His troops shifted uneasily, their confidence wavering for the first time. Blake closed his eyes, his body going limp. The beacon on his wrist shone brighter, its pulse sensing with the tremors in the earth. The ice in the mountains continued to break apart, revealing dark shapes hidden beneath. Massive metal chambers, buried for centuries, began to emerge. The Xerth soldiers aimed their weapons at the rising structures, unsure whether to attack or retreat. One of them fired a shot, but the energy bolt dissipated before reaching its target, as if the air itself had turned against them. Thrax growled, his sharp claws digging into the ground. "This changes nothing," he roared. "Kill him. Kill the human." But before his troops could move, a deep mechanical sound echoed from the mountains. The chambers opened, releasing a dense mist that poured out like a living entity. Shadows moved within the fog, growing larger with each passing second. And then they stepped into the light. Humanoid figures, covered in frost and gleaming with advanced armor, emerged from the mist. Their eyes glowed a bright, icy blue, and their movements were deliberate, purposeful. They carried weapons unlike anything the Xerth had ever seen. The leader of the group, a tall woman with silver hair and a face as cold as the ice she'd emerged from, looked down at Blake's still form. She knelt beside him, placing a hand on his chest. "Rest now, Captain," she said softly. "Your fight is over. Ours has just begun." She stood, turning her glowing gaze toward the Xerth forces. "You wanted a war," she said, her voice like steel. "You found one. The awakening of Earth's super soldiers." The battlefield was silent, but it was a silence filled with tension. The icy wind howled through the cracks in the earth, sending shivers even through the Xerth's armored exoskeletons. Their leader, General Thrax, clicked his mandibles in frustration. He had come to claim victory, not face whatever this was. The mist thickened, coiling around the Xerth forces like a predator stalking its prey. The super soldiers, still emerging from their cryogenic chambers, moved with eerie calm. Each step they took sent small bursts of frost spreading across the ground. General Thrax barked an order. "Destroy them. They're just remnants of a dead species." His troops hesitated, unsure. These were not like the frail humans they had slaughtered before. The figures standing before them radiated power, ancient, calculated, and cold as death itself. The leader of the super soldiers, the woman with frost on her armor, raised her weapon. It was a sleek rifle with glowing blue veins running along its barrel, emitting a low hum that sent vibrations through the air. She didn't wait for the Xerth to attack. Instead, she spoke, her voice calm yet commanding. "You trespassed where you were never meant to. You took everything from us. Now, we'll take everything from you." She pulled the trigger. The weapon fired not bullets or plasma, but a concentrated burst of pure energy, freezing anything it touched. The first wave of Xerth troops didn't even have time to scream as they were encased in ice, frozen mid-step. Their forms shattered into pieces as the wind intensified, scattering their remains across the battlefield. The Xerth panicked. They fired their own weapons, but the Frost warriors were faster, their movements sharp and precise. A second soldier, a hulking man with mechanical limbs, charged forward, a massive blade extending from his arm. He cut through the Xerth ranks with ease, his attacks leaving trails of frost in the air. "Fall back," one of the Xerth commanders yelled, but there was no safety to be found. The mist seemed alive, creeping into their lungs, freezing them from the inside out. Soldiers dropped their weapons, clutching at their throats as ice spread beneath their skin. Thrax roared, his mandibles flaring. "They're just humans. Break them." He leaped into the fray, his claws aimed at the silver-haired leader. She turned to meet him, her expression cold and unflinching. Their weapons clashed, his claws against her frost-covered blade. Sparks flew as their strength matched, but she didn't flinch. She pushed him back with a single calculated strike, sending him skidding across the frozen ground. "You're outmatched," she said, her glowing eyes locked on him. "Surrender, and maybe we'll let you live." Thrax snarled. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. The Xerth Alliance has conquered 1,000 worlds. And yet, she replied, stepping closer, you've never faced anything like us. While the battle raged, the beacon on Captain Blake's wrist continued to pulse, its light growing brighter with each beat. Deep underground, more chambers began to awaken. The cryogenic pods held hundreds of super soldiers, Earth's final defense, frozen for centuries, waiting for the signal to rise again. Within one of these chambers, a pair of glowing eyes flickered to life. Another warrior, a young man named Kale, opened his eyes for the first time in centuries. His memories were hazy, his mind struggling to process the world around him. But the beacon's pulse called to him, steady and unyielding, like a drumbeat guiding him to war. Kale stepped out of his pod, his armor activating with a hiss of cold air. The AI embedded in his suit whispered in his ear, updating him on the situation. Enemy forces detected. Xerth Alliance. Human casualties, 99.9%. Kale clenched his fists. Not anymore. Back on the surface, the Frost Warriors were relentless. The Xerth forces, once so confident, were crumbling under the weight of Earth's last defenders. For every Xerth soldier that fell, another cryogenic pod opened, adding to the Frost Warriors' numbers. Thrax, bleeding and furious, activated his communicator. Deploy the warship. Level this entire battlefield. High above, a massive Xerth warship began to descend, its cannons charging. The ship's shadow loomed over the Frost Warriors, its presence a reminder of the Xerth's destructive power. The ground trembled as the warship prepared to fire. The silver-haired leader, Commander Alina Frost, watched the ship with narrowed eyes. They think brute force will save them, she muttered. She turned to her soldiers. We need to disable that ship. Kale, you're with me. The rest of you, hold the line. Kale, freshly awakened, but already ready for battle, nodded. Understood. Alina and Kale sprinted toward the ship, their movements a blur of speed and precision. The Xerth tried to stop them, but the Frost Warriors held the enemy back, their frozen weapons cutting through the air with deadly accuracy. As Alina and Kale reached the base of the warship, the ground cracked beneath them. The frost from their armor seeped into the soil, creating an icy platform that carried them upward. The Xerth cannons fired, but the Frost Warriors were too fast, dodging the blasts with ease. Alina leaped onto the ship's hull, her blade glowing with icy energy. She drove it into the metal, freezing the circuits within. The ship groaned as frost spread across its surface, disabling key systems. Inside the ship, alarms blared. Thrax watched from the ground, his fury boiling over. They're just humans. He shouted again, as if repeating it would make it true. But the Frost Warriors were no longer just humans. They were something more, something stronger, colder, and far deadlier. Cliffhanger. As the frost spreads across the warship, its engines fail, sending it into a slow descent. Alina stands atop the freezing hull, staring down at Thrax. This is just the beginning, she says, her voice calm and certain. The battlefield is silent except for the hum of the beacon, which pulses louder, awakening even more chambers hidden beneath the earth. The Frost Warriors strike back. The Xerth warship groaned as the frost spread across its massive hull, its engines sputtering with freezing bursts of steam. On the ground below, General Thrax's claws dug deep into the frozen earth. His fury was palpable, his mandibles clicking in frustration. This was supposed to be a simple mission, a clean victory over the last human stronghold. Instead, it had become a nightmare. Commander Alina Frost stood atop the crippled warship, her frost-covered armor gleaming under the dim sunlight. She raised her blade high, its icy energy casting a chilling glow across the battlefield. Her voice echoed over the ruins. You thought you could end us, but humanity doesn't die, it adapts. With a sharp motion, she drove her blade into the ship's surface. The frost surged deeper into its systems, locking its weapons and engines in place. The warship shuddered, its massive frame sagging as the frost consumed its structure. Alina leaped down, landing gracefully beside Kale, who was watching the scene unfold. "More troops are coming," Kale said, his glowing eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance, waves of Xerth reinforcements marched toward the battlefield, their metallic exoskeletons gleaming under the blood-red sky. "They're throwing everything at us," Alina replied. "Good. Let them." The Xerth counterattack. The ground trembled as the reinforcements arrived. Xerth soldiers moved in synchronized lines, their weapons charged with crackling energy. Drones flew overhead, scanning the Frost warriors with precision targeting systems. General Thrax barked commands, rallying his troops. "They're outnumbered. Overwhelm them. No mercy." The Frost warriors, still vastly outnumbered, stood their ground. Alina stepped forward, raising her weapon. She turned to her soldiers, her voice calm but firm. "We may be few, but we are the future of humanity. This isn't just a battle. It's a message. Show them what we're made of." Kale smirked, ready to make history. Alina didn't answer, but the faintest hint of a smile tugged at her lips. She raised her hand, and the Frost warriors charged, unleashing the Frost arsenal. The Frost warriors moved with terrifying speed and precision, their enhanced bodies and advanced weapons making them nearly unstoppable. Kale activated a device on his wrist, summoning a frost drone that hovered over him, firing energy blasts at the advancing Xerth. He darted through the battlefield, his twin blades slicing through alien armor like paper. Alina led the main charge, her frost rifle unleashing waves of freezing energy that immobilized entire squads of Xerth soldiers. The mist thickened, swirling around the Frost warriors like a living entity, shielding them from enemy fire. The frost wasn't just a weapon, it was a force of nature, bending to the will of the awakened super soldiers. The Xerth drones locked onto Alina, their targeting systems whirring as they unleashed a barrage of plasma fire. But the frost around her intensified, creating a shimmering shield that absorbed the blasts. With a flick of her wrist, Alina sent a shard of ice hurtling toward the drones, destroying them in a single precise strike. The turning tide. Despite their superior numbers, the Xerth forces began to falter. The Frost warriors' relentless assault, combined with their strategic precision, was unlike anything the Xerth had encountered. Their usual tactics of overwhelming their enemies with brute force were useless against these enhanced humans. General Thrax watched in disbelief as his troops fell one by one. His claws twitched with frustration. "They're just humans," he snarled. "How are they doing this?" A nearby commander, smaller and more cautious, stepped forward. "These are not ordinary humans, General. They are something else." Thrax growled, his mandibles clicking furiously. "Then we will adapt. Deploy the Iron Behemoth." The ground shook as a massive Xerth war machine emerged from the rear lines. The Iron Behemoth, a towering monstrosity of metal and plasma cannons, loomed over the battlefield. Its glowing core pulsed with destructive energy, and its cannons locked onto the Frost warriors. The Frost warriors versus the Behemoth. The Iron Behemoth unleashed its first attack, a concentrated plasma beam that scorched the earth as it tore through the Frost warriors' ranks. Several soldiers were thrown back, their armor damaged but still functional. The frost mist surged forward, trying to envelop the Behemoth, but its core emitted a wave of heat that repelled the cold. Kale cursed under his breath. "That thing's got a heat shield. The frost can't reach it." Alina narrowed her eyes, analyzing the machine. "It's overheating itself to keep us away. That shield won't last forever." She turned to Kale. "We need to take out its core." Kale nodded. "I'll cover you. Just don't take too long." Alina sprinted toward the Behemoth, dodging its plasma blasts with inhuman agility. Kale followed, his frost drone providing cover fire. The Behemoth's cannons rotated, tracking their movements, but they were too fast. Reaching the machine's base, Alina drove her frost blade into one of its legs. The metal groaned as ice spread through the joint, weakening its structure. Kale climbed onto the behemoth's back, targeting its secondary weapon systems with his frost grenades. The behemoth roared, a deafening, mechanical sound, before firing another plasma beam directly at Alina. She rolled out of the way just in time, the heat singing her armor. Kale, hit the core now. Kale leaped onto the behemoth's front, his frost blades glowing with energy. He drove them into the machine's core, the impact sending a shockwave across the battlefield. The core sputtered, its heat shield failing as frost consumed it. With a final deafening explosion, the behemoth collapsed, its massive frame crashing to the ground in a cloud of ice and steam. The Xearth forces, seeing their strongest weapon destroyed, began to retreat. Cliffhanger. As the Xearth fled, the beacon on Blake's wrist pulsed again, stronger this time. Deep beneath the earth, more chambers began to open. The Frost Warriors turned their attention to the retreating aliens, their icy gazes unrelenting. Alina looked at the beacon, her expression unreadable. "This isn't over," she said softly. "This is just the beginning." From the distance, General Thrax watched with burning rage. "You may have won today," he growled, "but the Xearth Alliance will return. And next time, we'll bring something even your frost can't stop." Above the battlefield, the sky darkened. The beacon's light pierced the clouds, sending a signal into the stars. Humanity's last line of defense. The battlefield, now littered with the frozen remains of the Xearth forces and the shattered wreck of the Iron Behemoth, seemed quiet for a moment. But the Frost Warriors knew better. Silence was never peace. It was a pause before the next strike. Alina Frost stood at the forefront, her frost-covered blade still humming with residual energy. The beacon on Blake's wrist was glowing brighter, pulsing faster, as if impatient. She glanced down at the dying captain, his body weak, but his spirit unbroken. "You've done enough," she whispered, her voice colder than the wind around her. "Rest now. We'll take it from here." Kale approached, his face marked with concern. "The Xearth aren't done. Their warships are regrouping in orbit, and Thrax isn't going to let this go." Alina nodded. "I know. They've underestimated us once. They won't make that mistake again." The Xearth's desperate plan. Above Earth's atmosphere, aboard the Xearth flagship, General Thrax paced furiously. His claws clinked against the metal floor as he studied the holographic display of the battlefield. The Frost Warriors were relentless, efficient, and unlike anything the Xearth had prepared for. "Those cursed humans have evolved into something unnatural," Thrax hissed, his mandibles clicking with frustration. "They're using weapons and technology we've never seen before." A subordinate, smaller and more analytical, stepped forward. "General, we've detected a network of energy signatures below the planet's surface. It's extensive. Their cryogenic chambers weren't isolated. There are likely thousands more of these soldiers waiting to be awakened." Thrax slammed his claw onto the table, denting the metal. "We can't allow that. Deploy the Annihilation Core. We'll scorch the entire planet if we have to." The subordinate hesitated. "General, deploying the core will destroy all resources on Earth, including the ones the Alliance intended to harvest." Thrax growled, his eyes narrowing. "I don't care. If we can't use the planet, no one can." A plan of their own. Back on the ground, the Frost Warriors regrouped. Alina gathered her team in the shadow of the destroyed behemoth. Kale was busy tending to a damaged frost drone, while others checked their weapons and armor. "They're bringing something bigger," Alina said. "Thrax won't retreat. He'll escalate." Kale stood, his glowing eyes locking onto hers. "Then we escalate too. Whatever's down there," he pointed toward the earth beneath them. "It's time to wake it up." Alina nodded. "Agreed. But we need to move fast. If Thrax uses a planetary weapon, everything on the surface, including us, is gone." The beacon pulsed brighter, casting rhythmic waves of light. The Frost Warriors felt its call deep in their bones. It wasn't just a signal, it was a command. Something ancient, Something human had been waiting for this moment. Beneath the ice, Alina led her team to a hidden entrance revealed by the beacon's pulsing energy. The Frost Warriors descended deep into the earth, through tunnels carved long ago. The air grew colder, the walls shimmering with frost patterns that seemed to shift and move like living art. At the bottom of the tunnels, they found it, the Vault of Aegis, an ancient facility buried beneath Earth's surface. The walls hummed faintly, and blue lights flickered to life as they entered. Rows upon rows of cryogenic chambers lined the cavern, each containing a soldier like themselves, frozen in time. Kale approached a control panel, his fingers brushing over the dusty surface. These soldiers, they're older than us. They've been here since the start of the war. Alina studied the chambers, her expression unreadable. They're the original project. The ones humanity put everything into when we realized we couldn't win a conventional war. Kale frowned. So why didn't they wake up earlier? Alina pressed her palm against the central console, activating the beacon's link. The room lit up as the system responded to her presence. Because they weren't meant to fight just any battle. They were meant to save us from extinction. The cryogenic chambers began to hum, their frost-covered exteriors glowing faintly. The ancient warriors stirred within, their eyes glowing blue like Alina's and Kale's. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber, the AI overseeing the vault. Protocol Aegis initiated, awakening Earth's final defenders. The Xerth's ultimate weapon. Above the planet, the Xerth flagship deployed the Annihilation Core. A massive spike device descended from the ship, glowing with unstable energy. It was designed to vaporize everything on the planet's surface, leaving nothing but barren rock. The countdown began. Thrax watched from the bridge, his mandibles curling into a sinister grin. Let them see the futility of their struggle. Let them watch as their planet burns. The final awakening. Back in the vault, the Frost Warriors prepared for the next phase of the battle. The ancient soldiers were awakening faster now, their weapons integrating with the updated systems in the facility. Alina's AI interface chimed in her ear. Warning: high-energy weapon detected in Earth's atmosphere. Impact in 10 minutes. Kale cursed. We're out of time. Alina stepped forward, her voice steady. We're not done yet. This isn't just about us. It's about every human who sacrificed everything to give us this chance. She activated the beacon's final protocol. The vault began to shake as the ancient soldiers stepped out of their chambers, fully armed and ready. But this time, something else stirred. In the center of the vault, a massive structure began to rise. A towering mech, larger than anything the Frost Warriors had ever seen. Its design was unmistakably human, but it radiated power far beyond their understanding. Kale stared in awe. What is that? Alina smiled faintly. The Aegis Titan, humanity's last weapon. Cliffhanger. As the Aegis Titan powered up, its core emitted a pulse that resonated across the planet, disrupting the Xerth's Annihilation Core. Thrax's flagship trembled as alarms blared. General, a subordinate shouted. The core is destabilizing. We're losing control. Thrax roared in frustration. No, destroy them. Destroy the planet. On the ground, Alina climbed into the Aegis Titan's cockpit, her frost blade merging with its control systems. She looked up at the sky, where the Annihilation Core glowed ominously. Let's finish this, she said, her voice echoing through the mech's speakers. The Titan's massive frame moved, and the battlefield trembled. The Frost Warriors cheered as their leader prepared to face the Xerth's ultimate weapon. Above, the Xerth forces scrambled to contain the chaos, and beneath the earth, the ancient warriors of humanity were fully awake. The hidden Earth Armada. The ground quaked under the sheer weight of the awakening Aegis Titan. Towering above the battlefield, it was a testament to humanity's indomitable will. Its armor, a shimmering alloy of frost-infused metal, pulsed with energy that made the air crackle. Alina Frost, seated within its cockpit, gripped the controls. The Titan responded to her movements as though it were an extension of her own body. Above Earth's atmosphere, chaos erupted aboard the Earth flagship. The Annihilation Core, destabilized by the Aegis Titan's energy pulse, flickered erratically. Its countdown continued, but it now sent unpredictable shockwaves through the Earth fleet. General Thrax paced the bridge, his claws tearing into the deck. "What is happening?" he roared. A subordinate, trembling, reported, "General, the Annihilation Core's containment field is failing. If it detonates prematurely, it will destroy our fleet as well." Thrax slammed his fist into the console. "Then we die destroying them. Redirect all firepower at that thing on the surface." The Titan's first steps. On the battlefield, the Earth forces regrouped, their weapons locked on the Aegis Titan. The warship in orbit fired its cannons, sending massive energy blasts streaking toward the ground. The Titan raised its frost-coated shield, deflecting the blasts with bursts of freezing energy that shattered them into harmless shards. Kale and the other Frost Warriors moved to protect the vault's entrance, knowing that Earth wouldn't hesitate to send ground forces. Kal's voice crackled through Alina's communicator. "We'll hold them off down here. You take care of that big gun in the sky." "Understood," Alina replied. Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of something else. Determination, perhaps even hope. The Aegis Titan crouched slightly, its massive legs tensing. Then, with an earth-shaking leap, it launched into the air. The ground below shattered from the force, leaving the Earth troops stunned. The Titan ascended toward the Earth fleet, its frost engines leaving a trail of icy mist. The Armada awakens. Deep within the vault, the beacon's energy pulse continued to spread. It reached hidden nodes buried across the planet. Ancient bunkers, submerged sea bases, and orbital platforms long thought lost. One by one, these systems came online, activating Earth's hidden armada. Massive starships, dormant for centuries, rose from their hiding places. They were sleek, angular designs bristling with frost-enhanced weaponry. Eye-controlled drones swarmed around them, forming a protective shield. On the ground, Kale watched as the ships ascended into the atmosphere. His grin widened. Looks like humanity had a few surprises left. The Xerth fleet detected the Armada's activation and scrambled to respond. Smaller Xerth ships moved to intercept, but the human starships were faster, their frost cannons firing beams of concentrated energy that froze alien vessels mid-flight. The Titan versus the flagship. Alina's Aegis Titan landed on the surface of the Xerth flagship with a deafening crash. Its massive feet dented the ship's hull, sending Xerth engineers scrambling for cover. The Titan's frost blade ignited, and with a single swing, it carved through the flagship's outer defenses, exposing its vulnerable core. Inside the ship, Thrax bellowed, "Bring it down. All weapons on that thing." Turrets on the flagship swiveled to target the Titan, but Alina moved with uncanny precision. The Titan's frost shield absorbed the blasts, redirecting their energy into the blade. She drove the weapon into the flagship's core, releasing a wave of freezing energy that rippled through the ship's systems. Alarms blared as frost spread across the ship, disabling its engines and weapons. Thrax, now desperate, activated a hidden escape pod. "This isn't over," he snarled as the pod launched into space. The Annihilation Core. With the flagship disabled, Alina turned her attention to the Annihilation Core. It hovered in orbit, its unstable energy threatening to detonate at any moment. The core pulsed with fiery light, a stark contrast to the icy calm of the Titan. Kel's voice came through the communicator. "Alina, that thing's about to blow. If it goes, it'll take the entire planet with it." "I know," she replied. "I'll handle it." The Aegis Titan pushed off from the flagship, propelling itself toward the core. Alina's AI interface analyzed the device, its voice calm but urgent. Core stability at 12%. Catastrophic failure imminent. Alina activated the Titan's frost engines, sending it into overdrive. The Titan's arms extended, wrapping around the core as frost energy poured from its systems. The core resisted, its fiery heat clashing with the Titan's icy power. The battle wasn't just physical. It was a clash of forces, of survival versus annihilation. The Titan began to freeze the core, layer by layer, but the heat pushed back, threatening to overload its systems. A critical decision. On the ground, Kale and the Frost Warriors watched in awe as the Titan battled the Annihilation Core. The human starships continued their assault on the remaining Earth fleet, driving them further away from Earth. Kale muttered, "She's going to burn out the Titan if she keeps this up." Inside the cockpit, Alina's systems flashed red. The Titan's core was nearing critical levels, unable to sustain the frost energy required to contain the Annihilation Core. The AI's voice broke through the static. "Solution detected. Manual override required. Pilot must eject." Alina hesitated. If she ejected, the Titan would lose control, and the core could still detonate. But if she stayed, there was no guarantee she'd survive. She took a deep breath. "No. Override denied. We finish this." The Titan's frost core flared, unleashing a final surge of energy that enveloped the Annihilation Core completely. The fiery light dimmed, replaced by a crystalline frost that locked it in place. The core was neutralized. Cliffhanger. The Aegis Titan floated in orbit, motionless. Its systems were dark, its once brilliant glow extinguished. On the ground, Kale stared up at the sky, his expression grim. "Alina." But before anyone could respond, the beacon pulsed one final time. Across the galaxy, hidden systems activated, sending a signal far beyond Earth's reach. The Frost Warriors and the human fleet stood in silence, unsure of what was to come. In deep space, a massive unknown fleet began to stir. The signal had reached them, and their glowing eyes opened. They were not human, nor Earth, but something else entirely. Humanity's fight wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Sacrifice and survival. The Aegis Titan hung in orbit like a frozen monument, its frost-covered surface reflecting the light of distant stars. Alina Frost's voice, once calm and commanding, was silent. Below on Earth, the Frost Warriors and Kale stood motionless, staring at the sky. The Annihilation Core was neutralized, but the cost was uncertain. Kale activated his communicator. "Alina, respond. Are you there?" Static. The beacon on Blake's wrist, still faintly glowing, suddenly pulsed with renewed energy. It sent a signal not only to the remaining Frost Warriors, but to the hidden fleet still awakening across Earth. The hum of ancient engines filled the air as long-buried ships continued to rise from the ground and oceans. Cal's frost drone whirred next to him. Uplink suggests pilot vital signs are critical. Aegis Titan systems offline. "She's alive," Kale muttered. "She has to be." The Earth's final play. In the shadow of Earth's moon, General Thrax's escape pod docked with a cloaked Earth command vessel. Inside, the general limped to the bridge, his rage palpable. His armor was scorched, his pride shattered. "Report," he barked. The ship's commander, a smaller Earth with nervous energy, approached. "The fleet is in disarray. The Annihilation Core is neutralized, and the humans have activated their hidden armada." Thrax slammed his claw into the console, cracking its surface. "The Alliance cannot afford to lose here. If word spreads that humans not only survived but overpowered us, the other species will rebel. Deploy the Shadow Flare." The commander hesitated. "But General, the Shadow Flare isn't stable. It's cold." "I don't care." Thrax roared. "If I can't destroy Earth, I'll blind the galaxy to what happened here. No one will know they survived." The Shadow Flare was a weapon of desperation, capable of emitting the wave of energy that would wipe out all communications and sensor systems in the sector. It wouldn't destroy Earth, but it would isolate the planet, cutting it off from any potential allies. Alina's survival. Inside the Aegis Titan, Alina drifted in and out of consciousness. Her systems were failing, The frost energy drained from the mech's core. She felt the cold pressing against her skin, her breath shallow. The AI's voice broke through the haze. Pilot vital signs critical. Emergency hibernation protocol available. No, Alina whispered. There's more to do. The AI hesitated. Beacon signal detected. Reinforcements incoming. Through the Titan's cracked visor, Alina saw movement. A small fleet of ancient human ships, now fully operational, approached the Titan. One of them, a medical recovery vessel, extended its docking arms toward her. Alina let out a weak sigh of relief before everything went dark. The Shadow Flare activates. On the Earth command vessel, the Shadow Flare weapon charge, its spiked core glowing with unstable energy. Thrax watched the countdown, his mandibles twitching with satisfaction. Soon, the galaxy will forget these humans ever existed, he hissed. But just as the weapon reached full power, the newly awakened human fleet emerged from hyperspace. Sleek and bristling with frost-enhanced technology, the ships moved with a precision that startled even the Earth crew. The largest of the human ships, a dreadnought called the Polaris Ascendant, targeted the Earth command vessel. Its captain, an AI construct with a voice as cold as Alina's, sent a transmission. General Thrax of the Earth Alliance. Surrender or face eradication. Thrax sneered. Your threats mean nothing. Fire the weapon. The Shadow Flare unleashed its energy wave, a blinding pulse that spread across space. Human ships flickered, their systems straining under the impact. But unlike the Earth expected, they did not falter. The frost-enhanced cores of the human vessels absorbed the energy, converting it into additional power. The Frost Warriors counterstrike. On the ground, Kale and the Frost Warriors received the beacon's final directive. The signal revealed the location of Earth reinforcements, hidden on the planet's dark side. These troops had been preparing to ambush the human armada as it launched. Kale tightened his grip on his frost blades. They think they can outflank us. Let's show them what they woke up. The Frost Warriors moved with silent efficiency, their glowing eyes cutting through the shadows. As they reached the Earth encampment, Kale gave the order. No mercy. The battle was swift and brutal. The Earth, already demoralized by their losses, couldn't stand against the Frost Warriors' speed and precision. By the time the sun rose over Earth's horizon, the last of the hidden Earth forces were frozen and shattered. Alina's return. On board the Polaris Ascendant, Alina awoke in a medical bay. The ship's AI greeted her with a calm voice. Welcome back, Commander Frost. Your survival was statistically unlikely. Alina smirked faintly, her voice hoarse. Good thing I don't care about odds. Cal's voice came through the comms. Took you long enough to wake up. You missed all the fun. What's the status? Alina asked, forcing herself to sit up. Cal's tone turned serious. The Earth are retreating, but Thrax is still out there. He deployed some kind of weapon, but our ships handled it. Alina nodded. Then it's time to end this. The final push. The human armada, now fully operational, surrounded the remaining Earth fleet. Alina, back in command of a smaller frost mech, led the charge. The Polaris Ascendant fired its main cannon, obliterating the Earth command vessel's shields. Thrax, cornered and furious, activated his ship's self-destruct sequence. If I go down, I'll take as many of you with me as I can. Alina's voice cut through the chaos. Not today. Using her frost mech, she breached the Earth vessel's hull, leading a team of Frost Warriors directly to the bridge. Thrax fought savagely, his claws slashing through the air, but he was no match for Alina's precision. With a final strike, she drove her frost blade into Thrax's core, freezing him in place. His last words were a snarl of disbelief. How? Alina whispered, humanity doesn't fall. It rises. Cliffhanger. As the Earth fleet scattered, a final transmission from the beacon echoed across the galaxy. It wasn't a message of victory. It was a warning. Deep in uncharted space, something ancient stirred in response to the beacon's pulse. Ships larger than even the human dreadnoughts began to move, their silhouettes monstrous and unfamiliar. Back on Earth, Alina stood on a frost-covered hill, staring into the stars. Kale approached her, his usual smirk replaced with a somber expression. "You feel it too, don't you?" Alina nodded. "This war isn't over. Something worse is coming." The camera pans upward, revealing the distant fleet, its glowing red eyes piercing through the darkness of space. Humanity's new dawn. The stars above Earth were no longer silent. The distant fleet, monstrous and vast, moved through the void with eerie precision. Their ships were nothing like the angular designs of the Earth or the frost-enhanced vessels of humanity. They were organic, alive, pulsating with a dark, crimson energy that radiated across the galaxy. On Earth, Commander Alina Frost stood on a frost-covered hilltop, her gaze locked on the ominous movement in the sky. Kale stood beside her, his blades holstered but his posture tense. "They're coming," he said, breaking the silence. "Whoever, or whatever, they are, they're bigger than anything we faced." Alina's voice was calm but resolute. "Then we face them, just like we faced the Earth. Humanity doesn't run." The Red Fleet's arrival. The unknown fleet, now closer, eclipsed entire star systems as it advanced. As their ships approached Earth, strange gravitational disturbances rippled through the solar system. Moons shifted in their orbits, and the sun's light dimmed momentarily, as if acknowledging the arrival of something far older and more powerful than humanity or the Earth. On board the flagship of Earth's newly awakened armada, the Polaris Ascendant, Alina addressed her commanders. Her voice carried the weight of humanity's survival. "This isn't just another enemy. This is something else entirely. But let's make one thing clear. Earth doesn't bow. We don't retreat. We don't break. We've risen before, and we'll rise again." Kale, standing beside her, grinned. "So what's the plan? Fly up there, freeze their ships, and hope for the best." Alina smirked. "Not hope. Strategy." The unexpected revelation. As the human fleet prepared for battle, the beacon pulsed one final time. A massive holographic map appeared on every ship's display, detailing a hidden network of ancient human installations spread across the galaxy. Each marked location held advanced technology humanity had long forgotten. "These aren't just installations," Alina realized aloud. "They're weapons. Entire systems built to protect us from them." The fleet AI spoke, its tone urgent. "The beacon's signal has awakened the Aegis network. The approaching fleet matches records of the Erythian Collective, an ancient species believed to have exterminated multiple galactic civilizations." Kale frowned. "So, not the friendly kind then?" The AI continued. "The Erythians consume. They dismantle worlds, assimilating organic and mechanical life into their collective. Their arrival is not an invasion. It's an extinction event. A race against time." Alina knew what had to be done. Humanity couldn't fight the Erythians head-on, not yet. They needed the weapons hidden within the Aegis network. The fleet split into two groups, one to protect Earth, and the other, led by Alina, to retrieve the dormant technologies. The Polaris Ascendant led the charge into deep space, its engines roaring as it activated its frost drive, warping to the first location marked by the beacon. The system they entered was empty, a dead star surrounded by debris. But within the rubble, they found it. The Helios Spire, a massive weapon designed to unleash a star-killing blast. Alina's team worked quickly to reactivate the spire while fending off the first wave of Erythian ships. These vessels were unlike anything they'd seen, shifting, regenerating, and emitting disorienting energy pulses that scrambled targeting systems. Kale led the ground assault on the spire, his frost warriors engaging Erythian drones that swarmed like locusts. Each drone was fast and relentless, adapting to the frost technology. Kale grit his teeth as he slashed through a dozen of them. "They're learning. Alina's voice came through the comms. Then we need to learn faster. Activate the spire. The Helios spire awakens. As Kale and his team fought off the last wave of drones, the spire roared to life. Its core, a swirling vortex of frost and plasma energy, unleashed a beam of light that tore through the Erythian fleet. Ships disintegrated under its power, their organic hulls unable to withstand the raw energy. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining Erythian ships shifted their formation, absorbing the spire's energy and redirecting it back toward the human fleet. Alina watched in horror as smaller human vessels were destroyed in the counterattack. "They're adapting too quickly," she muttered. "We can't win this with brute force." The true power of the beacon. Back on Earth, the Frost Warriors defending the planet noticed something strange. The beacon, now pulsing brighter than ever, began transmitting data, not to Earth's ships, but directly to the Erythian fleet. Kale, still aboard the Polaris Ascendant, frowned as he noticed the transmission. "Alina, the beacon. It's talking to them." Alina's eyes widened as the realization hit her. It's not just a signal. It's a failsafe. The AI confirmed her suspicions. The beacon was designed to lure the Erythians. It holds the code to disrupt their collective consciousness. If fully activated, it can sever their hive mind. "But it's on Earth," Kale said. "And they're heading straight for it." The final stand. The Erythian fleet converged on Earth, their ships descending into the atmosphere like a plague. The Frost Warriors, outnumbered but undeterred, launched their counterattack. Kale led the charge on the ground, while Alina directed the human fleet from orbit. The beacon, now glowing with an intensity that lit up the sky, began its final activation sequence. Its pulse grew stronger, sending shockwaves that disrupted the Erythian ships. The once coordinated fleet faltered, their movements erratic. But the Erythians weren't giving up. Their largest ship, a living dreadnought the size of a moon, descended toward the planet, preparing to destroy the beacon before it could finish its activation. The sacrifice. Alina knew what needed to be done. She activated the Polaris Ascendant's core, preparing to overload it. "Kale, you need to get out of there. The beacon will finish this, but we need to buy it time." Kale's voice crackled through the comms. "You're not serious." "I am," Alina said firmly. "This is the only way." The Polaris Ascendant charged directly at the Erythian dreadnought. Its frost cannons fired continuously, tearing through the organic hull. As the human fleet followed suit, the beacon completed its activation. A blinding wave of energy erupted from the beacon, spreading across the planet and into space. The Erythian ships froze in place, their organic forms crystallizing as the hive mind was severed. The dreadnought, now leaderless, collapsed in on itself. A new dawn. When the light faded, the battlefield was quiet. The Erythian fleet was gone, their ships reduced to lifeless husks. The beacon's glow dimmed, its task complete. On the ground, Kale stood in silence, staring at the sky where the Polaris Ascendant had vanished. "She did it," he whispered. Across the galaxy, the ripple effect of the beacon's activation was felt. Humanity's hidden installations powered down, their job finished. The Erythians would never threaten another world. Epilogue. Months later, humanity began to rebuild. The Frost Warriors, once humanity's secret weapon, became its leaders, guiding the survivors into a new era. Kale stood at a memorial built for Alina and the crew of the Polaris Ascendant. He placed a hand on the frost-covered plaque, his expression somber. "She'd hate this," he muttered. "Too much attention." A voice behind him replied, "You're right." Kale turned, his eyes widening. Standing there, alive and smiling faintly, was Alina Frost. "Miss me?"